Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Peterson, the Marketing Technology Director for Wheaton Arts, a white female in my mid-50s with brown hair and highlights. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am broadcasting from Southern New Jersey, which I recognize as traditionally the land of the Lenni Lenape. And we want to special shout out and thank you to our sponsors, PNC Arts Live and the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. We'd also like to invite you to support Wheaton Arts directly through membership, donations, or shop Wheaton Arts. You'll see me put those links in the chat very soon. And also in the chat, I will be putting a link to the upcoming exciting list of registration that you can sign up for monthly, sometimes once a month or sometimes twice a month to participate in these live Wheaton conversations. Also, you can always go to our playlist on our YouTube channel for the full, every single one of our Wheaton conversations. It's now my pleasure to introduce my coworker, Pamela Wakeman. She will moderate, as I mentioned, throughout this evening. She's going to be here asking your questions out loud. Pamela Wakeman is the Director of Education and Artist Services at Wheaton Arts. At the end of the presentation, there will be a longer time for question and answers, and she'll take care of that for you too. So welcome everyone, and I hand it over to you, Pam. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you again. As Marcy mentioned, my name is Pamela Wakeman, and I am the Director of Education and Artist Services at Wheaton Arts. I'm a white female in my mid-30s with long brown hair and blue eyes. Tonight, I am wearing a beige sweater. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I recognize that I am also broadcasting from Southern New Jersey, traditionally the land of the Lenni Lenape. It is my pleasure to introduce our two guests. Our first guest is Dan Dailey. He is an American visual artist who has simultaneously produced sculpture and functional art with an emphasis on lighting since 1970. Made primarily from glass and metal, every piece of work begins with a drawing. Dailey's drawings and the objects they inspire depict human character and the world we inhabit, many familiar forms rendered iconic. Since 1971, Dan has participated in over 300 group, juried, and invitational exhibitions, and has had numerous one-person museum and gallery exhibits, including major retrospectives at the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian Institution and a recent installation at the State Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Thank you, Dan, for being with us here this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Our next guest is Richard Royal, a native of the Northwest and resident of Seattle. Richard is recognized internationally as one of the most skilled and talented glassblowers in the studio glass movement. His sensitivity and natural affinity towards material reveal themselves within his extensive body of work. Richard's work is included in renowned public and private collections worldwide. His work is found in such noteworthy museum collections as the Mint Museum of Art and Design in Charlotte, North Carolina, the High Museum in Atlanta, Georgia, and the New Orleans Museum of Art in Louisiana, along with many more. Thank you both for joining us here this evening. It has been our pleasure over the years to host both of you at Wheaton Arts, and you both came to Wheaton through different programs. Can you elaborate on your Wheaton experiences and how you engaged with Wheaton and this community over the years to start us off tonight?
Sure. Do you mind if I start first, Rich?
No, go ahead.
I don't remember exactly how it came about, but I first became involved with Wheaton Arts by being on the committee to choose fellows. And I did that for a period of maybe, I don't know, 6 years worth of choosing fellows. And then I went off the committee and, I was a guest along with other visiting artists and scholars and educators who would come in and look at the entries and get it down in a couple of days from a big list to a smaller list of the people who would actually receive invitations. First of all, seeing that process and participating in it was pretty interesting, just because of the diversity of applicants, and I mean geographically, as well as the their personal agenda, what they thought they could make with an opportunity like Wheaton provides. And secondly, I was very pleased to be involved in something that was sponsored by a place with such a facility, and leaving it wide open to artists, bringing people in to actually use such a massive facility and have all those resources that are way beyond what most people's studios could offer. So it was very cool to be part of that. And then maybe, I don't know how many years after I had stopped doing that, I got an invitation to be a fellow and come and work. And I could not do it for, I think it was a 2-month term or something like that. I just couldn't stop my life for that long. But I asked if it might be possible to split into a couple visits or do something a little different. And also I asked if I could, at the time I was collaborating with Lino on some things in Murano. And so I figured, well, maybe we could do that again in New Jersey, and that'd be interesting. So we did, and we were offered that. It was very nice, and it was very good. So we continued the work we had started in Italy, in New Jersey, and made some new friends here and there along the way. It was all good. And so those are my working experiences in the place. And since then, I've known many of the people who are fellows or were fellows. And just, I have great respect. And I have to say, I think the programs that you have are really unique. They don't exist anywhere else. And it's akin to getting a grant, just this kind of conferral of support and money. In a way, it's not cash, but it's money of another sort. And it's really a good thing for an artist. It also allows some people to take, in a way, a sabbatical from what they do in their routine and focus really on what they dream of doing. So I think it's a great place.
I'm glad you frame it like that, because experimentation within the fellowship program is highly encouraged.
Yeah.
I concur with all you said there at the end, Dan, about how it's a great place to come and just try out new things and work outside your comfort zone. And I see people in the fellowship programs coming here and doing that, doing a lot of strange things. The strangest being that somebody made a vessel to carry a black widow spider nest and had black widow babies. I hadn't seen that before. So anyway, I first showed up at Wheaton, I'm going to say in the 80s, maybe sometime, and came out with Dale Chihuly and did a workshop at Wheaton then with him. And then sometime, maybe even in the 90s, that Dan and I came out and did something together. I don't remember, but I have a painting that Dan did that commemorates that experience there. And beyond that, I've been out several times as a visiting artist in the artist in residency program, which is, like I said, a great opportunity for me to get to know the people in the area, get me to know the people who work at Wheaton, and also get to meet some of the fellows and talk to them about the program. And everybody has such a positive response to being there. And as Pam points out, their ability to pretty much try anything they want, and the way the facility makes that possible for them, and gets the right kind of materials and equipment and that sort of thing to work there. So it's always been such a pleasure to come out there, and really, I think the place is really special. So
Thank you both.
Okay, well, the first images are my images. This is a mural made of cane, and we pulled a lot of cane, made a lot of color, and I got a big palette of glass to work with and compose these scenes. This scene is called Skyfire. It's about the Cuyahoga River in Ohio. And obviously it's pollution, but beautiful pollution. The previous image was at the bottom of in Linden, New Jersey, from the scene from the New Jersey Turnpike, looking at the refinery. This is a scene of 57th Street in Manhattan, walking down 57th and looking up like the walls of a canyon, walking through that, all those buildings on the street, and just playing with the sense of the buildings as an object in space. This is a circus vase called Aquamotion, and it uses the transition of color from the base to the top as a cue for the cast glass figures that also have similar color transitions. This is a piece called Eye to Eye. It's from a series Richie and I made together in Seattle, and they're vase forms, but they're not vases. They have no openings. And it's an opportunity to draw on a white form and put some of my linear drawings around them, making drawings in the round. And this is another one from the same series. It's called Animalia. You can see a couple of birds there. The drawings are deliberately not immediately discernible as what they are. Like the two lions looking at each other on the bottom don't jump out at you right away, but when you see them, then you can't not see them. This is a chandelier made for someone on request who had at the time 2 poodles. So it's a poodle chandelier, and they're very stylized in an almost Art Deco manner, which I like and they liked. So it was all part of the developing concept for this piece. And there's another kind of a pendant style chandelier with 2 figures. And the figures are bronze in this case, no glass embedded in them, but they have lights in the tops of their heads. So it has 3 sources of light. This is a piece from a fabricated music series, which I made when my stepfather passed away, who was a jazz musician at part of the time in his life. And it's obviously a guitar. And another one called Mysterioso, which is an homage to Thelonious Monk and his kind of staccato, interrupted style of presenting the notes in a really clear manner. And then another one called All Blues from the same series. I guess the title's backwards on this. I didn't notice. What's coming up. This is from the Abstract Head series. It's a piece called Puff. And maybe not. I got the title wrong. Chase. This is Chase. There are 2 big red pieces, and I got the other one in my mind. So the Abstract Heads, I think there's another one here. This one's called Vogue. They are portraits, but not of any specific individual. And they really allude to cubism in the way of taking apart and rebuilding a face with its elements in a stylistic way. And there's one of New Jersey again, Linden, New Jersey. So I think, Richie, you want to show your slides?
Yeah. If Marcy wants to cue me up here, I'll get started. So I'm from the Northwest, as we said, and this is my view every morning when I go for my morning walk. The first piece is a piece from my Diamond Cut series, as is this one. And this is a series I started in the early 80s and continue to revisit over the last 4 decades. And I'm currently doing that now and creating these pieces, which is a process that started. I'd been doing a lot of work with Dale Chihuly, and he uses a thing called an optic mold, and it would create ribs, and the glass has memory about that. And this is how Dale would create a lot of his work. And I love the idea of doing that, but doing it in a little more radical way. So I actually make blanks, which you see here, and then they get put back into an oven. You can see how I've cut very deep slices. They're probably an inch and a half thick. And they're put back into an oven where I can actually stuff a bubble inside the cut blank. And as I force air into that bubble, so here's just a quick shot of making the blank. And so that's one process for a day. And then they have to be, of course, cooled down to room temperature and then manipulated in a cold fashion. And then we pick them back up. And here you see, after we pick up the blank, and you see the bubble that's been stuffed inside it. and I'm using air and a torch to kind of control where the heat and where the expansion happens in the piece. So you can see as it's expanding out. And what it does is it allows me to leave thinner areas that are cut up more than thicker areas, and the thicker areas contain more weight, so I can use the heat and the centrifugal force to actually determine the forms of these pieces. And as you can see here, it's starting to become more oblong and quite hot. And then so I try not to touch the work too much in this process. It's more I determine the forms in the cold process and then rely on the heat, gravity, and centrifugal force to form the vessels afterwards. And so I work on these new pieces. They're part of the Diamond Cut series, but I call them lovebirds at this point. Because I'm really excited about the way the forms are really developing here. And it's something I've seen in doing this work over many decades of using this process, but I'm finding new ways to use it. I love glass. I love the texture that you can create in glass. I love that it has an incredible strength to it that allows you to make really things that they look fragile, but are really quite strong. This is from the Relationship series, about two entities coming together and embracing a single idea, common goal, spiritual belief, whatever you want to assign to that vessel or that central image. And then a few years after I did those, I started adding these copper matrix, which would hold these branches, called them the spray series, kind of as a celebratory response to a relationship. And when my son was born, I started I do these kind of abstract eyeball shapes. And as it was, Dan and I were both invited to come and work at Waterford Crystal in Waterford, Ireland. And I got to really explore these forms using the lead crystal available there. And it was really nice to work and explore the forms without having to worry about color and that. And plus I had access to all the incredible engravers at Waterford. And all I needed to do was explain to them what I wanted to have done with the pieces. And then they would realize all the cutting. So this piece is called Olivine. And then the apertures became more upright, vertical, as did the kids, more lyrical and expressive in the way they would move. So the apertures, but the whole idea of calling these apertures was to, at the birth of my son, I realized that I needed to be open to approach my life in a different way. Kids really changed the equation of how you can behave on a daily basis. And I started to have to make decisions that had more to do with them and then really with me and what I wanted to do. And so, and then eventually started doing these aperture pieces in solid glass, in part because I wanted that central orb to be solid glass so it actually works like an aperture. If you were to put something behind that sphere, it would turn it upside down and backwards, just the way your eyeball works or an aperture in a camera would work or that sort of thing. But again, staying thematically with the idea of these, it kind of goes back to the relationship pieces. It's hard to tell if these elements are coming from the central orb or going towards it or coming from it. But and then those pieces evolved into what I call the apropos pieces. I was got interested in doing a color application where the color wasn't so static, and the solid glass allowed me to create geometric forms as an element of these pieces. And as you walk around the pieces, the colors change and switch and replicate themselves, and they're in constant movement. So you don't have that static sort of application of color to the piece. This is an optic lens piece. I grew up in the Northwest, spent my whole life on the water, fishing and skiing and doing all sorts of things. And always, even from I was a little kid, I loved the lighthouses. And so this is my homage to the Fresnel lens, which is a very cool piece of glass. Some of my favorite stuff, favorite glass pieces. And so, and again, these are quite active. And then as an extension of the apertures using the geometric forms, I thought one day, what if I just take geometric forms and start putting them together to create sculptures? And I started doing some research on it, and the way geometry works in nature and how plants grow, how cells replicate, the way fingerprints are. There's Fibonacci curves and the golden mean, and all this stuff is, it's like mathematics is a language to explain nature in the way it actually works. And so I didn't want to make things like natural things, trees and that sort of thing, but I just wanted to make sculptures and borrow that system of building on, replicating parts, building on themselves. So these are pieces from the geometric series. And then during the pandemic, I didn't have access to a hot shop. And so I had to find other ways to work. So I had some parts around to keep me busy during the 15 months that I was away from the hot shop. But I decided to try introducing other mediums and creating forms that maybe look glassy somewhat. They're shiny and maybe have kind of a glassy sort of aspect to them. But all the primary colored parts of these pieces are made from metal, styrofoam, Bondo, and automotive paint. And it was a great way to kind of, continue with this geometric idea and add an element that in a way doesn't make any sense to the actual sculpture, but it happens to work. So anyway, next slide. And then in doing the geometric pieces, I always like to illustrate in my work in some way how incredibly strong and durable glass is. It's this dichotomy of fragileness and strength that I find fascinating, and the things you can do with it. And I work in an intuitive way with these pieces, and I just kind of follow as we build these pieces. So a piece like this I can work on for probably putting it together, probably take me about 3 months to assemble a piece like this. I think that's it. I've worked with Dan, like I said, I don't remember when we started. I think it was at Pilchuck.
I think it was at Pilchuck, yeah, about 1980 or 79 or something.
Yeah, 79 or 80. I showed up at Pilchuck in 78, and Dan was there, and we ended up doing starting some of his blown headpieces like we see, and I can remember. I don't know why I remember this. It wasn't at Pilchuck, but I was keeping an eye on Dan, and he was doing some of these pieces. I remember a piece called Low Bridge, where he took a vessel and then
distorted vessels, yeah.
Yeah, distorted vessels, and he had these highly developed kind of pieces, and I was going, these are really interesting because I came from a ceramic background, so I was so used to creating utilitarian objects, but I was trying to do useful objects. So when I started working in glass, I pretty much had the same approach. And then I'm looking at Dan's work, and I said, well, you can't really use these as vessels, although they're vessels, but they're not vessels. He's taken the pragmatic aspect of them and taken it away. And so I thought that was interesting. And I also like keeping an eye on people. His vessels were really pretty substantial. They were pretty thick, pretty substantial. So he kind of approached the glass in a completely different way. He, textured the surface. So I found it very interesting. So we ended up working together then, and pretty much kept working together until the pandemic showed up, pretty much. And that kind of put the kibosh on everything. So, but it was such a different way for me to working with Dan. And like he mentioned, or someone mentioned that, he draws out all his ideas. There's very little repetition, if any. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, we were working in the up at Benny's early on, and I think we were doing the it may have been just the heads, kind of the extenuation of
I think that's where we first started. Yeah.
yeah. And we did this one piece and we boxed it. Then we're working on another piece and it's a little bit similar, but not exactly the same, but they both had, I just remember, I don't even remember what the pieces looked like, but I remember they both had a neck on them. And on one neck, I put this spiral wrap all the way up to the top of the neck, up to the opening, and then put a lip wrap around it and stuff like that. We started the next piece and I said, you want to finish this just like the last one? And you said, yeah, but just somehow it got lost in the communication. So I put another spiral wrap on the neck of that piece. And both you and Ben looked at each other and went, oh God, you said something about spontaneous design or something like that. Like it wasn't in the drawing. And I realized that you were trying to make everything exactly like the drawing, that you weren't working, you know, like all of a sudden going to decide to change something about your drawing just because you had an idea. You would go back to your drawing studio and draw something else. If you had an idea in the shop, you wouldn't change the pieces that we were working on. We always stayed very true to your drawings. And I'd never worked with anybody like that. And as we go, we can talk more as we see some of these images, but it's just been so cool.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing, well, first of all, when we started, when I went to Pilchuck, I just made all my own stuff. And there were a few years there in the 70s when I just, you know, I got up at 4 and go down to the shop and meet a couple people would come down and help me, and we'd blow glass till breakfast before I had to teach a class. And so my work I was the glass blower then. And I've never been a great glass blower. But when I started meeting people like you, I realized, man, like you could make whatever I could draw. And, maybe it was a challenge at some point. We tried it 3 or 4 times, but eventually, there's no need for me to make it myself. It's not like I had to do that. I feel perfectly good letting go of that part and just having somebody as good as you actually make it. So that to me was a learning opportunity in itself. And then the kinds of things that we developed, there always has been like conversation about it. And why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And I've incorporated that in my thinking. And as you say, go back to the drawing and maybe show up the next day with a drawing that incorporated something that was discovered the day before. So yeah, I've always liked that a lot. And I think with you, I've had more collaboration of my thinking in the development of work than with anyone. So
I have a question that relates to what you're speaking about. Amy Nelson would like to know, how does collaboration actually work? Who comes up with the idea? Are sketches used? And are you together in the hot shop? You started to touch on this, but perhaps you want to elaborate a little further.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I want everybody that's listening to understand that the collaboration that Dan and I do is more about how to realize his ideas. The pieces themselves are not collaborative. I have nothing to do with the design of his pieces, other than maybe something that Dan sees or wants to try or seen me do, and he's asked me to try it on a piece of his. But the work is not collaborative work, but the way we make the work is collaborative. And so,
it's not conceptually collaborative, it's physically collaborative in the element, the making of the piece.
Yeah. And so Dan does all the drawings. I taught a class, I can't remember, it must have been late 80s, I think, at Pilchuck with Larry Jassy and Ann Wallstrom. And the concept of the class is that we would teach a drawing class. And the idea was that you draw something, you take it to the hot shop and try to realize a piece and figure out what works with it and what doesn't work with it, and then go back to the drawing studio and redraw the piece, and so it works better in the hot shop. And so you create this dialogue between the hot shop and the drawing studio. And that's kind of how Dan works. And when we first started out, it was probably rougher because Dan wanted to make the drawings and all the details of the drawings to appear as if they were made from glass. And so he would draw these drawings of how he thought glass would look if you put a bit here or whatever. And then we'd go to the studio and find out, well, that isn't exactly how it looks. So he would modify his drawings as time went on, and they became more glass-like. And I think when you showed the abstract heads, I think that is probably really a good illustration of what you were looking for in approaching these, especially the head series, and creating elements of those heads that look more like a natural way that glass actually behaves.
You want to show that first drawing and the piece that resulted from it? Yes. So this is a piece called The Doctor, and it's from a series of character heads, I called them. And the drawing on the right is my pencil drawing, graphite drawing of the piece. And then the piece on the left, you can see it's a loose interpretation of that drawing. The spikes sticking off his head are not striped all that perfectly. The points aren't that pointy. But basically the character is captured in that drawing. And then in the actual glass piece. The other thing about it is that the glass piece is, I would say, a loose interpretation of the drawing because of the nature of the glass. So I was able to draw with hot glass on the piece. And my skills with the hot glass were, inept, but at the same time, there's a looseness to it that I liked. So I kept on working with it and developed it. And the other pieces in the series made at the time, this is 88 now, it's a few years later, but it's doing what Richie was talking about. It's using the hot glass and paying attention to the way it works.
Right. Yeah.
Dan, what
And
inspires the drawings? Even before this glass piece obviously was inspired by the drawings, but what is the inspiration or the impetus for the drawings?
Well, let's see. First of all, I like to adopt a format, and this happened to be the format. Now, but so it's a vase form, basically. It's a vessel form. But the form is, to me, the vessel has long been a format for expression. Even very traditional looking vases, to me, are a little bit like a blank piece of paper. I mean, I see it as like a painting is often rectangular. To me, it's just like a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper. I use it to make my expressive thought real. And in this case, then it becomes sculptural because it's in the round and you can see it from multiple angles and it has light coming through it. So it becomes alive in a way. And then the character head is part of a whole series. And there's, someone called the buffoon, someone called the warrior, someone called the major, someone called the chef and the gourmand, and so on. And the doctor happens to be kind of a concept about doctoring in a way, because I believe there's an element of shamanism in all doctoring. People have to believe in their provider, otherwise it doesn't work very well. And I remember I was in an audience, or I had an audience one time, I was showing this, and somebody said, "Why would you make a doctor look like that?" And I said, I think what I just said, that a doctor has to have some element of the shaman in him to have the power and over the individual. And people look up to a doctor, come to the doctor, fix me. And so this is all part of that thinking.
So how many, I mean, I know you did a lot of these. I mean,
there aren't that many. I'd say maybe 20 or
yeah.
So at the most. And they weren't made all at once. So I think probably we blew them in 2 sessions, and it took me 2 years to finish them.
Right.
I don't work in a hurry, really. I mean, we make things. You go to the hot shop and you blow parts, in my case, or pieces like this. And then if they're blown in Seattle and brought back to my studio in New Hampshire and then worked on, let's see, in 88, I wasn't here. here yet. So I was in Massachusetts in a different studio. And then, and then I went to West Virginia and acid polished it. So it's a good, from the time it's blown till it's a done piece, I don't know, it could be 4 6 months to a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do have another question. Perhaps you could answer it now or later, but Brenda Davison would like to know, what are your plans for the future?
That's a good question. Dan and I have been talking a lot about this stuff lately. Just the nature of all the work we've done over the last 40, 50 years, and not with with each other, but as well as just for ourselves. And my plans for the future is to keep working, but I think I want to work more carefully and more deliberately, and really have a better idea and sense of what I want to see get accomplished. Like I said, I used to work really intuitively, and still do, but I'd work a lot. I mean, I'd blow glass a lot, and now I don't feel like I need to blow glass as much as I need to spend more time just in the studio thinking about what I want to make and being really careful about the kind of colors I choose and the forms I want to make. And just and that's not to say I hadn't done that always in the past. It's just I think I'm looking at it in a different light now, and being more selective about the choices I make. So I don't know if that answers his question, but that's kind of where I'm at with my own personal work.
I feel like I've been thinking about the future in many ways myself. And as you said, Rich, with you, we've talked about glass blowing and where and when and that sort of thing. And one of the results of the pandemic has been that, first of all, I stopped having people in my studio to help me. And for a while, I just was paying everybody, and I realized I can't do this forever. So then it started to get long, and I asked people to go on unemployment, and they did. And then within, I'd say, the first year, at least 4 people left my employ to just strike out on their own and use that employment as an opportunity. And then I still have a couple of assistants helping me, but my work pattern has changed quite a lot. And I finished up a couple of commissions for sconces and other pieces, and then I'm making a little mural now. It's commissioned for someone in Florida, and I'm having fun with it. I'm really enjoying it. It's a cane mural, and I have drawings underway for a large commission that's more architectural for a house, and elements that I would make. And somebody asked me to make to have an exhibition about automobile images at a car show in Las Vegas coming up, and I said, yeah, sure. And so I'm playing around with that. I don't know exactly where I'm going to go with it, but I've always liked car images, and I've been playing with this notion of automobile ego. I have so many unfinished pieces in my studio. I'll never finish them in my lifetime. It's just, I got to decide what I shouldn't finish, I think, and just work on the others. So I feel like maybe I should be, I don't know, slowing down or looking at the next chapter and thinking, how can I define it? But so far I haven't, I don't know. I feel like I'm in a momentum of work that was started and is still going, and it's pushing me as much as I push it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, I just can't imagine not making something for you and for myself. It's a conversation I have with my wife quite often. That she wants me to commit to 4 days a week, but it takes me five days a week to commit to 4 days a week. Yeah, I don't know, but here we are in the shop working on one of Dan's individual pieces, and what we're doing right now is we've got this large, which looks like an almost entirely black bubble, but it is 2 or 3 really transparent colors, as you'll see in a later image. But we're just rolling up some surface elements but I want to preface all of this by saying that we're working off a drawing Dan's done of the actual size and scale of the piece that he wants to do, and all the colors are already chosen, everything is already done. And so we've done a lot of prep work to make the little white stripes that you see me rolling onto the surface of this bubble. And you can see the torch, and there's a number of pieces that are people that are helping us do these things. When we make these pieces, we usually work with a crew of 5 or 6 people in order to be efficient with our time. And
you need to heat up those little pieces, otherwise they might pop and jump all over the place when the hot bubble over them. So the idea is to warm up the steel that's sitting on, and also warm them up and then roll it on.
Right. So you can imagine Dan has a very specific idea of the way he wants. This is the torso of the piece, and he has a very specific idea of how he wants it to look. And sometimes he comes in, maybe most of the time, I don't know. I mean, we've been doing it so long together at this point, he has a good idea of how it might look and how we would do it, and how to make the shapes and what they're going to look at like after you blow it up, because things change when you get the thing liquid and that sort of thing. So there's been long conversations that precede what's going on here in this image. And as we look at the piece, we can talk more about all of that stuff. But basically, this is a very early on in making the torso element of this individual. I don't remember which one it is, but what's
this piece called Spin.
Spin.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to talk about, that aspect of your individual series. And so here we are. We're just trying to cover the bubble with these little white elements as close to the drawing as we can make them.
And at this stage, you're just going through mechanics of building it, the basic blank to blow out and then shape. But it's already starting to gain a character that I couldn't quite imagine in the drawing. And you're not seeing this particular drawing, but you'll see the piece at the end, the way these white forms stand out against their background they don't look quite the same as they do on the very hot bubble like this, when the color is not really working.
So here we are on this yellow tube we call the weapon of mass destruction. And it's actually just a sonotube, which is a construction thing that you can buy at Home Depot or any lumberman's yard or anything. And we're shaping the backside of the torso. So it has more of a rounded shape, creating on the upside would be the chest of the individual. And then when we go over to the bench, you'll get a better idea. But right now we're creating this odd shape and creating the bottom for the shape at the same time. And so when Dan does these pieces, he has a very specific idea of how he wants the posture of these individuals to be, to create a message, a sense of who this person is. And these individuals have very specific characters and personalities, and we spend a lot of time just tweaking these things, really ever so slightly, but just a little bit. But it's pretty amazing how much just a little bit different of an angle can change the whole character of a piece.
Well, it's the gesture, yeah.
Yeah, like the gesture of the piece, as you'll see. So here it is after coming off that tube, and you can see the round shape there that is created on the backside. And what we're doing is now we're measuring, so we put creases in to create what would be the arms of the individual. And basically that's a very simple gesture that we apply to the surface of the piece with a line, or maybe even, I don't know, sculpt it in a little bit more so it actually has a little more shape. But we spend a lot of time using calipers to measure the drawings, where the arms are, and how they're, how they're supposed to look. And the whole time we'll be actually setting the piece upright on the floor. We have a piece of wood that we sit it on, and it sits upright on the floor to make sure, again, that the gesture and the personality of the piece is what Dan has envisioned. Because it's really different to take a two-dimensional drawing and turn it into a three-dimensional piece. The drawings are never look as big as the pieces do when you actually start working in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, that's
so here is the piece.
So you can see how the color now stands out. And before, when it was hot, you couldn't really read the color. But now the translucency of the glass is letting light through, and the white doesn't stand out in the same way. It sort of blends in, but it's clearly there. And I like the way the lines define the form. It's like, when a person wears a striped sweater, let's say, it shows the contours of the body, the wrinkles in the cloth and everything. It's really always been an interesting thing to me. Yeah. And the gesture in this case is pretty subtle. And the spin is to me, the spin is an abstract title that has to do with making things appear a certain way.
Yeah. So what I wanted to point out about, we talked about earlier in some of the early headpieces and things like that, that we were trying to create them and apply bits to them that, and then that had a very glass-like, physical glass-like quality to them. And we continue to do that in these pieces, but when it comes to the head portion of these pieces, say, and especially in like the case of the nose and the lips, these things are applied and manipulated quite extensively. So again, they tell the story of the piece spin. And it's kind of a departure from what we were doing earlier with some of the other heads. But then we also use like the eyebrows and the eyelids and the hair. These are more organic, I guess, gestures using the glass and the glassiness and the physical quality of the glass. So there's a nice combination of extensive manipulation and then also kind of just fluid behavior that we apply to these headpieces. And these pieces take an incredible amount of work. A head like this could probably take us 3 to 4 hours to get it just the way Dan likes it. So it does reflect the drawing and the idea of what Dan's trying to express here.
I'm happy with the series, the individual series, because it started out just as a notion, some thought to try, and then over time it's been another format that I've adopted, like the vessel, but in this case it's a bust, and some of the busts, are not traditional, like they lie down on the table or they're standing on the person's standing on their nose or something, right, resting on their nose. But all the things that I've done with it have been reacting to the basic format of a traditional bust, and the glass allowed me to interpret it my way and to take it in directions that I think are personal.
Yeah,
observations of human behavior and human character.
I just wanted to, I've learned a lot working with you, and one of the things I tell people is I say, Dan, when he has an idea and he commits it to paper and he commits the drawing, and then if he starts putting color on the paper, then he's truly committed to it. And we've done some of these individuals, and I've, sometimes I might have an idea that I think is a good idea and it doesn't work out right away. I might just leave it in the dust and not even ever revisit it. Whereas Dan, I find that you really pursue your ideas, that you have this incredible commitment to the idea. And the one I think about probably more is that kind of the King Henry VIII sort of bust individual that we did. It wasn't the King Henry one. But for those of you listening in, Dan comes out to Seattle and he comes out and will work for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And he's got a whole page of a wish list of things he wants to get done in the amount of time that we work. And we try to get everything done, but the King Henry VIII bus, we did that torso, I don't know how many times. Probably 4 or 5 times.
It was never big enough.
It was never quite big enough, but it was never quite right. And it would keep cracking or something, but he never, I mean, he was so committed to the idea that we did it until we finished it. And I was just going like, that's so different than the way I think about pursuing ideas. And so I've kind of adopted some of that behavior in my own work, is that I try to illustrate and adhere to a stronger commitment to my work, and not let it go so quickly. And so, I really, and having the opportunity to work with Dan and work in that manner has really taught me a lot. So I just wanted to say thank you for letting me have the opportunity to do this.
Thanks, Rich. It's equal respect and praise for you and your tenacity and work. I mean, it's been super for a long time.
Yep, we're coming to the end of our hour. So I'm going to encourage everybody listening to enter any questions, last minute questions that you have into the Q&A feature, and we'll start reading them.
I will answer the question about the Parkman Coupe.
Sure, yeah, start with that.
In this case, the Parkman Coupe was made to honor the discovery of a vaccine for rubella by Dr. Paul Parkman and his partner at the National Institute of Health, Harry Meyer. And President Lyndon Johnson gave them awards for their discovery at the time, 1967, I believe it is. I'm not remembering all the details here, but the piece was inspired to me a little bit by a piece made by Gallet in honor of Louis Pasteur for his discovery of the vaccine. So I think there were similarities in their pursuit of a solution to a problem that plagued, no pun intended, a lot of people. And they figured it out, and they did something good. Interestingly, right after they reached that discovery and developed the vaccine and did the testing and everything, they were at National Institute of Health in 1967. They began working then on AIDS, on finding a solution to AIDS. It was certainly not in the news then, but that's the case. So you could ask Paul Parkman about this, and the piece was made in honor of the Parkmans. The piece belonged to the Parkmans for a number of years, and they gave it to the Renwick, to the Smithsonian. I can't remember when. And so it's a little bit odd in this context of my work, meaning it's kind of a formal object compared to what I was making at the time, and even the vase form. It relates to some things I made in the 70s when I was blowing glass myself. I made some forms like that. It's kind of an allusion to Etruscan and ancient Greek forms, and some Roman ones too, probably. But in any case, it's all the symbolism on the piece, from the frieze of labware at the top to the beagle dog and other animals that were used in lab testing at the bottom. There are little messages about their path of discovery. So that's kind of the quick story of the Parkman Coupe.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any more questions that have come in.
All right. We must have been very thorough.
Or people fell asleep.
One of the two.
Time for dinner.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for joining us here this evening. And I want to remind everybody that we will have this recording available on our YouTube channel. So we encourage everyone to view that as well. And here are the Instagram and websites for both Dan and Rich. We encourage you to follow them and to look at their work on their websites.
And we wish you all good night. Thank you both. Feel free to get in touch with Pamela or myself. Good night, all.
Bye, everybody.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much for everything, you guys.